The rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home, the wipers of my Ford struggling to keep up. I'm Quentin, a 44-year-old software engineer living in Seattle, Washington. I loved the city, loved my job, and more than anything, loved my wife, Isolde. Or at least I thought I did. Our 10th anniversary had just passed a few weeks ago. We celebrated with a quiet dinner at our favorite Italian place downtown, the same one where I proposed. I remember how her eyes sparkled that night, how she laughed when I almost dropped the ring. Now that memory felt like a cruel joke. For the past few months, things had been off. Isolde, a vibrant and outgoing woman, had become distant, almost cold. She worked longer hours at the art gallery she managed, often coming home late, claiming inventory or special events. I chalked it up to the busy season, but a nagging feeling persisted, a knot of unease that tightened with each passing day. It started subtly. A new perfume I didn't recognize, a reluctance to hold my hand in public, text messages she quickly deleted when I entered the room. I tried to talk to her to bridge the growing gap, but she always brushed me off, saying I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. "Don't you trust me, Quentin?" she'd ask, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. And I, like a fool, always said yes. I wanted to trust her. I needed to. The thought of Isolde being unfaithful was unbearable, a nightmare I desperately tried to ignore. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Tonight, I was working late myself, trying to debug a particularly nasty piece of code. Around 9 p.m., I realized I had left my favorite coffee mug at home, the one Isolde had painted for me with a silly cartoon of a coding robot. It was a small thing, but I was tired, and the thought of a hot drink in my own mug was enough to make me brave the Seattle rain. I decided to swing by the house, grab the mug, and head back to the office. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Isolde's car was gone. Strange, I thought. She hadn't mentioned anything about going out. Maybe she had an emergency at the gallery. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. Isolde. I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. No answer. I walked into the kitchen, heading straight for the mug. As I reached for it, my eyes landed on something that made my blood run cold. On the kitchen counter, amidst a pile of mail, was a receipt. It was from a small, intimate restaurant I had never heard of, tucked away in a secluded part of the city. The date was today. The time was 7:30 p.m., and the amount, it was far more than Isolde and I would ever spend on a casual dinner. My heart pounded in my chest. This couldn't be happening. There had to be a reasonable explanation, but deep down I knew. I grabbed the receipt, my hands trembling, and walked into the living room. That's when I saw it. On the coffee table, partially hidden beneath a magazine, was a small velvet box, the kind that usually holds jewelry. My breath caught in my throat. I picked up the box, my fingers fumbling with the clasp. I opened it. Inside, nestled against the soft velvet, was a diamond pendant, a beautiful, expensive diamond pendant. A pendant I had never seen before, a pendant I certainly hadn't bought for Isolde. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The rain outside intensified, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I sank onto the sofa, the pendant still clutched in my hand, a wave of nausea washing over me. This was it, the confirmation of my worst fears. Isolde was cheating on me. I sat there for what felt like hours, numb, unable to process the enormity of the betrayal. The woman I loved, the woman I had shared my life with, had been lying to me, deceiving me right under my nose. The pain was unbearable, a crushing weight that threatened to suffocate me. I wanted to scream, to break things, to lash out in anger. But all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by grief and disbelief. Eventually, I managed to pull myself together. I had to know the truth. I had to confront Isolde. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. It rang and rang, going straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Isolde. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." Her voice, so familiar, so comforting, now sounded like a cruel mockery. I hung up without leaving a message. I couldn't bring myself to speak to her, not yet. I needed time to compose myself, to gather my thoughts, to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. I decided to wait for her to come home. I would sit here in the darkness and wait for her to walk through that door. And when she did, I would demand answers. I would demand the truth. The hours crawled by. The rain continued to fall, a relentless, mournful rhythm. I replayed the events of the past few months in my mind, searching for clues, for signs I had missed. Her late nights at the gallery, the secretive phone calls, the new perfume. It all made sense now, a horrifying puzzle coming together piece by piece. I felt like an idiot, a fool who had been blinded by love and trust. How could I have been so naive? How could I have not seen what was happening right in front of me? Around 1 a.m., I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heart leaped into my throat. This was it, the moment of truth. I stood up, my legs shaky, my hands clenched into fists. I walked to the front door and waited. The door opened and Isolde stepped inside. She looked surprised to see me. "Quentin, what are you doing here? I thought you were working late." Her voice was casual, almost nonchalant, as if nothing was wrong. As if she hadn't been out on a date with another man, as if she hadn't been wearing a diamond pendant he had given her. "Where were you, Isolde?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated for a moment, then forced a smile. I was at the gallery. We had a late shipment to process." "Don't lie to me, Isolde," I said, my voice growing louder. "I know where you were." I saw the receipt, the restaurant, the diamond pendant. Her face paled. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking pale and vulnerable. "Quentin, I can explain," she stammered, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. "Explain what, Isolde?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Explain how you could betray me like this. Explain how you could lie to me, deceive me right to my face." Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "Oh, really? Then what is it, Isolde?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is it a business meeting, a late-night art class, or perhaps you were just admiring the city lights with a new friend?" She flinched as if I had slapped her. "It just happened," she said, her voice barely audible. "It wasn't planned, it just happened." "Just happened," I repeated, my voice incredulous. "You just happened to go to a romantic restaurant with another man. You just happened to accept an expensive diamond pendant from him. You just happened to betray our marriage, our vows, our love." She started to cry, the tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Quentin," she sobbed. "I never meant to hurt you. I still love you." "Love me?" I scoffed. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have broken my heart, shattered my trust, destroyed our life together." I held up the diamond pendant, my hand shaking. "Who gave you this, Isolde?" I asked, my voice cold and hard. She hesitated for a moment, then whispered a name. "Caspian, Caspian." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. He was a local artist, a rising star in the Seattle art scene. He was also a frequent visitor to Isolde's gallery. I had met him a few times, had even had a few conversations with him. He seemed like a nice guy, talented, charming. But underneath that veneer of charm, he was a snake, a predator who had been preying on my wife. "Caspian," I repeated, my voice filled with disgust. "You're having an affair with Caspian. That's who you've been sneaking around with. That's who you've been lying to me about." She nodded, her head bowed, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "How long, Isolde?" I asked, my voice barely controlled. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated again, then whispered, "A few months." "A few months." The same amount of time I had noticed her growing distant, the same amount of time I had felt the knot of unease tightening in my stomach. A few months of lies, deceit, and betrayal. The anger surged through me, a burning rage that threatened to consume me. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to make her feel the pain I was feeling, but I restrained myself. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "Get out, Isolde," I said, my voice cold and emotionless. "What?" she asked, her eyes wide with shock. "Get out of my house," I repeated, my voice louder this time. "I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to be in the same room as you." "Quentin, please," she begged, her tears flowing freely. "Don't do this. We can work this out, I promise. I'll stop seeing Caspian. I'll do anything, just please don't leave me." "It's too late, Isolde," I said, my voice unwavering. "You broke my trust. You shattered my heart. You destroyed our marriage. There's nothing left to work out." I pointed to the door. "Get out." She stood there for a moment, her face a mask of despair, then slowly turned and walked towards the door. As she reached for the handle, she turned back to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and regret. "I'm so sorry, Quentin," she whispered. "I really am." Then she opened the door and stepped out into the rain. I watched as she walked to her car, got in, and drove away. And then I was alone. Alone in the house we had shared, alone with the wreckage of our marriage, alone with the pain of betrayal. I sank back onto the sofa, the diamond pendant still clutched in my hand, and let the tears flow. I cried for Isolde, for the woman I had loved, for the life we had built together. I cried for myself, for the pain I was feeling, for the future I had lost. I cried until I had no tears left. The next few weeks were a blur. I contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. Isolde didn't contest it. She knew she had messed up, that she had thrown away everything we had. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment downtown. I couldn't bear to be in that house anymore, surrounded by memories of Isolde, haunted by the ghost of our love. I threw myself into my work, using it as a distraction from the pain. I worked late hours, often sleeping in my office, just to avoid being alone with my thoughts. My friends tried to be supportive, but I pushed them away. I didn't want to talk about Isolde, about the affair, about the divorce. I just wanted to forget. But the memories kept coming back, unbidden, like shards of glass piercing my heart. I remembered our wedding day, the vows we had exchanged, the promises we had made. I remembered our first apartment, the struggles we had faced, the dreams we had shared. I remembered the joy, the laughter, the love. And then I remembered the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. The contrast was unbearable, a constant reminder of what I had lost. One evening, a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I received a phone call. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a moment, then answered it. "Hello," I said, my voice cautious. "Quentin, it's Caspian." My blood ran cold. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice tight with anger. "I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice hesitant. "For what happened with Isolde. I know I hurt you, and I'm truly sorry." "Sorry?" I scoffed. "Sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. You destroyed my marriage, you broke my heart, you ruined my life, and all you can say is sorry." "I know," he said, his voice filled with remorse. "I made a mistake. I never meant for things to go as far as they did. It just happened." "Just happened," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's your excuse. It just happened. You just happened to seduce my wife. You just happened to betray my trust. You just happened to sleep with the woman I loved." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I know I can't undo what I did," he said finally. "But I wanted you to know that I regret it. I regret hurting you. I regret hurting Isolde. I regret everything." "Regret?" I said, my voice rising. "You want to talk about regret? Let me tell you about regret. I regret ever meeting Isolde. I regret ever falling in love with her. I regret ever trusting her. And I regret not seeing you for the snake you are." "I understand," he said, his voice barely audible. "I deserve your anger. I deserve your hatred. But I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." "Forgive you?" I scoffed. "I'll never forgive you. I'll never forget what you did. You're a parasite, a leech, a destroyer of lives. And I hope one day you get what you deserve." I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking with rage. I couldn't believe he had the audacity to call me, to apologize, to ask for my forgiveness. He was a coward, a liar, a manipulator. And I hated him with every fiber of my being. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, my anger began to subside. Not completely, but enough to allow me to start healing. I realized that holding onto the anger, the hatred, was only hurting me. It was poisoning my soul, preventing me from moving on with my life. I started seeing a therapist who helped me process my emotions, understand my pain, and learn to forgive myself for being so naive. I started exercising, eating healthy, and taking care of myself. I reconnected with my friends, spent time with my family, and rediscovered my passions. Slowly, gradually, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain was overwhelming, when the memories of Isolde flooded my mind, when the anger towards Caspian resurfaced. But I kept pushing forward, one step at a time, one day at a time. And eventually, I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. One day I was walking through a park in downtown Seattle when I saw her, Isolde. She was sitting on a bench, alone, looking lost and forlorn. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk away, to avoid the confrontation, to protect myself from the pain. But another part of me felt a strange sense of curiosity, a desire to see how she was doing, to understand what had happened to her. I took a deep breath and walked towards her. As I approached, she looked up and saw me. Her eyes widened with surprise, then filled with a mixture of sadness and regret. "Quentin," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello, Isolde," I replied, my voice calm and measured. I sat down on the bench beside her, leaving a small space between us. We sat in silence for a few moments, neither of us speaking, just listening to the sounds of the park. The birds chirping, the children laughing, the gentle breeze rustling through the trees. Finally, I broke the silence. "Are you?" I asked, my voice soft. She shrugged. "I'm okay," she said, her voice flat. "As okay as I can be, I guess." "I heard you and Caspian broke up," I said, my voice neutral. She nodded. "Yeah," she said. "It didn't work out. He wasn't who I thought he was." "What happened?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She sighed. "He was selfish, manipulative, and controlling," she said, her voice filled with bitterness. "He used me, Quentin. He used me for my connections, for my money, for my status. Didn't really love me." I felt a pang of sympathy for her, despite everything she had done. She had been used, betrayed, just like I had. "I'm sorry, Isolde," I said, my voice sincere. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry too, Quentin," she said. "I'm so sorry for everything I did. I know I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that." "I know," I said, "but it's over now. It's in the past. We can't change what happened. All we can do is learn from it and move on." She nodded, her tears flowing freely. "I miss you, Quentin," she said, her voice filled with longing. "I miss our life together. I miss our love." I looked at her, my heart aching with a mixture of sadness and nostalgia. I had loved her so much, had given her everything I had, but she had thrown it all away, had betrayed my trust, had broken my heart, and I couldn't go back. I couldn't forgive her, not completely. "I miss you too, Isolde," I said, my voice soft. "But it's too late. We can't go back. We can't undo what's been done. We have to move on." I stood up, ready to leave. "I hope you find happiness, Isolde," I said, my voice sincere. "I hope you find someone who loves you, someone who appreciates you, someone who will never betray you." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "Thank you, Quentin," she said. "I hope you find happiness too. You deserve it." I smiled at her, a sad, wistful smile, then turned and walked away. As I walked through the park, I felt a sense of closure, a sense of peace. I had finally confronted my past, had finally forgiven Isolde, had finally moved on with my life. It wasn't easy. It took time, effort, and a lot of pain, but I had done it. I had survived the betrayal, had rebuilt my life, had found my way back to happiness. And as I looked towards the future, I knew that I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. A few months later, I met someone new. Her name was Rachel, and she was everything Isolde wasn't. She was kind, compassionate, honest, and trustworthy. She loved me for who I was, flaws and all, and I loved her with all my heart. We got married a year later in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by our friends and family. It was the happiest day of my life. And as I looked at Rachel standing beside me, her eyes sparkling with love, I knew that I had finally found my soulmate. I had finally found true happiness. Isolde's betrayal had been a painful chapter in my life, but it had also been a catalyst for growth, a turning point that had led me to a better, brighter future. And for that, I was grateful. I learned that even after the most painful betrayals, life goes on and happiness can be found again. Years later, I heard that Isolde had moved to another city and was living a quiet, solitary life. She never remarried and never had any children. I felt a pang of sadness for her, but I also knew that she had made her choices, and she had to live with the consequences. As for Caspian, his career had fizzled out, and he was now working as a waiter in a small, out-of-the-way restaurant. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with him. I never saw either of them again, and I never thought about them much. I was too busy living my own life, too busy enjoying my happiness with Rachel. We had two beautiful children, a boy and a girl, and we lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs. We were a happy, loving family, and I couldn't imagine my life any other way. One evening, as I was tucking my daughter into bed, she asked me a question. "Daddy," she said, "what's the saddest thing that ever happened to you?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "The saddest thing that ever happened to me," I said, "was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it taught me that even after the darkest night, the sun will always rise again." And as I kissed her good night, I knew that it was true. Isolde's betrayal had been a dark night, but it had also led me to the dawn of a day filled with love, happiness, and endless possibilities.